Thank you very much, and thank you for that beautiful reading. Someone once told me, and I'm not sure if it is true, that the word darkling is only used twice in poetry. I mean, this was very many years ago that they told me this. So the one is Darkling Thrush, and the other is Ode to a Nightingale, where Keats says, "Darkling, I listen." Um, so I'm not sure if that's true, but if it is, here we have one of the times when it's used. Thank you very much. Um, well, so I was talking about how my poetry collection that was published, I can't even remember when. It feels like a lifetime ago. And how when I looked at it again, I was appalled and took to my bed, and haven't quite recovered yet from the horror. Um, so I have decided not to read anything from that, for my own mental health and for yours. So instead, I will tell you a little bit about the project Swart Boy and Titus, which is coming out later this year, um, and what inspired it, what it's about, and and then I will read a bit of that to you, and then I have a few other things that I've dug up that I can read. It will depend on how much time we have, but uh since when I came back from Brazil, when was it? Right at the end of 2021, and then 2022 until the end of last year, I was a postdoctoral writer in residence at Stellenbosch University with LEAP, which is the Laboratory for the Economics of Africa's Past. And it was an extraordinary opportunity, even though I know absolutely nothing about economics, nothing at all. But what made it so extraordinary is that it's run by Professor Johan Fourie, and he is not only an incredibly generous and inspiring person, he is also someone who truly believes in multidisciplinarity of coming together, people with different strengths, different fields of knowledge, and finding ways to research and then disseminate knowledge. So the people who had knowledge on the team about data and graphs and pie charts and things that I know nothing about. Um, they were all extraordinarily good, kind, lovely people, and I miss them now that I'm in Potchefstroom. Although I still attend some of their online workshops and things. Um, and they're doing extraordinary work on looking into Cape slavery or slavery in South Africa, um, during the Dutch period, also then during the British period where emancipation happened, but also a variety of other things, looking at different data sets that are not always looked at by historians necessarily, or that have been ignored a bit, and then using that data to find information about a lot of the people whose voices have not necessarily been heard. So, women, slaves, the Khoi indentured servants, and there are extraordinary stories that come out. And I think that it's a period in our own history that we don't know, well, that much about. And so one of the my colleagues there, um, Cal Lynx, he told me about, and I have put it aside to show you. Hold on a second. Don't look, I'm wearing my pajama pants. So this is Nigel Penn's, I don't know if you can see this, Nigel Penn's book, The Forgotten Frontier, which is an amazing history book about the northern frontier of the Cape Colony and about a time period when there was actually a battle going on, a war being waged between the the colonizers who were in a sense trying to get away from the VOC, the company, and trying to make a new life for themselves. Many of them struggling under real hardship because they didn't necessarily know how to farm, they didn't have the equipment, and going out into a wilderness. And then the people that had been living in this wilderness. So the this little Namakwa was the name of the tribe that was staying closest to them, but various Khoisan groups that had come together. And for a long time they lived in peace and harmony together, but then an event happened which started this war, this battle that was going on, and that event was more or less it was the fault of the colonizers, a group of colonizers, but the war was begun in a sense by Swartboy and Titus, this father and son who worked as servants on a farm. They had a man they called their master, um, and then they decided to turn their backs on their master. They wanted to be treated fairly and with respect. And so this is how the war happens. And so that's really what the story is about, but told from the point of view of this father and son, um, and their relationship. Although, I have had to condense it quite a bit because there are a whole lot of offshoots and things that happened along the way. Um, but the other thing is that, so it's not exactly poetry that I've written. It is a hybrid of different types. There's poetry, there's prose or prose poetry, there's some um, direct quotes from original documents, there's some lists, there's some quotes from Nigel Penn's book. So it's when I had the idea for the novel, I sort of thought of it in terms of an art exhibition where if you go to an art gallery and you look at each individual painting or whatever it is, um, and that individual piece can be looked at by itself, but together as you go around the gallery looking at all the different pieces, they form a story. And so if it hadn't sounded too pretentious and ridiculous, I would have wanted on the title or below the title for it to say Swart Boy and Titus an exhibition. But I think if I were looking to buy a book and I saw it said that, I would think this is so pretentious, I can't bear to buy it. So so that's why I left it off. And the book, we had hoped it would be ready and in the shops, but you know, publishing takes its own time. There are always going to be some other delay or something happening. So enough of me jabbering on. Let me read to you a little bit from it. But I do just want to say that because this is dealing with a lot of historical documentation, a lot of research done, it became very difficult in terms of choosing around certain words. There are certain words that are in our present time not not acceptable, and rightfully so. But at the time, they were used sort of there was no other word. Those were the words that they used, and so I have elected um, where reasonable, to keep words and have explained in the beginning that it's not meant in any kind of derogatory or insulting way to anyone. It's just to give a sense of authenticity, which I think is relevant when we consider that these are two groups of people that are in a war over culture, over land, over whose land it is and who belongs there, and they're going to have different terms for one another. Okay, so let me get to the beginning, and I will sort of pause between each section as though we are stepping from one painting to the next. The moon bends itself to the shape of the sky. They sleep, lying on their sides, up against the stone wall near the warmth of the fire's embers. The boy listens to his father's breathing, waits long enough that he feels safe to rise, leaving along paths he knows well. Behind him the cattle snort, his footsteps soft beneath the sound. Ahead small creatures scurry at his approach, bats swoop and turn. Across the district he is known as Charmant, though Master Falk named him Titus, just as he names all servants and slaves who work on his farms. Swart Boy, the name given to the boy's father when he first arrived at the Langevlei farm, coming from the veld, dusty and hungry, not a cow, not a goat, not a thing of his own, just the baby on his back, carrying it like a woman, begging at the farmhouse for a bit of milk, and being told he could work for it. Swart Boy since then, because his skin is so dark. But the boy is considered handsome, has always been. As a child crossing the yard with a slop pail, called over to the stoep by the mistress, having dried peaches pressed into his mouth, sucking the hard velvet of their skins, working them with his spit until they begin to expand and soften, then biting through them, bringing one half to his father, holding it out to him in the palm of his small hand, tasting that clammy sweetness, seasoned with his boy's breath. When Titus returns, he smells of hay and love-making. He sleeps deeply while Swart Boy watches the sky move away towards the dark mountains of the horizon. In the morning, he will not wake the boy at once. He will do the chores himself, allowing his son to sleep. Soft the cattle in their movement, dark heads bowing in the fog. Slow their lowing, slow the tramp of reluctant feet. Nothing now of the mountains, the flat plains, his distant home. Nothing but the easy splatter of their dark leavings. Whistling across the devoured veld, here is green, here, flicks their warm hides, moving them on, favoring those which are his own. Dull night falling, a low moon, young stars. He stacks wood for the fire, looks across to the wall of the kraal where his son has fallen asleep, head resting against one of its stones. Behind the wall, the cattle cough in shudders. The boy's face is hidden in the darkness, but he can make out the smooth brow, faint twitch of an eyelid at the sound of flint being struck by a knife. Sparks fly out, sharpen the brow into a frown, then drop and fade until one catches. He looks away from his son, bends to blow a tuft of dry grass into flame. The day's foraging goes into the pot, wild bulbs and herbs with a dussie from a snare laid out in the rocks overnight. He skins and guts it with the same knife he used to create the fire, the same one with which he will stir the stew and pierce the contents to see whether they have cooked through. When the meal is ready, he touches his son awake, waits as he sits up, rubs a hand across his face, looks around sheepishly. "You're not getting enough sleep," he tells the boy. "I sleep. Not enough." The boy takes the bowl and he goes back to the fire, dishes for himself, sitting down with his own bowl, eating this food, this taste of wilderness that grows fainter every year. "We'll be leaving in a few days' time," he says. The boy looks up, his mouth full. "Where?" "North." "What for?" "Master Falk and some of the other farmers say they need cattle, but the company has too many rules, and it's impossible to survive like this," he says. "He says they must be allowed to trade, and if the company won't let them, then the company doesn't need to know about it. Do you hear? The company can't know about this." "Who am I going to tell?" "No one. You must tell no one. That is the point. This isn't for you to talk about." "But we're going with them?" "Master Falk says we must go first to our people, then on to the Great Namikwa, if we can find them." The boy eats his food, taps a finger against the wooden bowl. It makes no sound, but he is excited, leans forward a little, asking when they will leave. "This is work. It isn't for entertainment." "I know that. I know." Still, the finger taps. These the members of the expedition: Willem van Wyk, Lodewijk Putter, Frans Kamfer, Hendrik Ras, Sybrand van Dyk, Matthijs Willems, Jacob Swart, Giel Andries van de Walde, Augustus Laurense, Jan Goes. Of the 12 Khoikhoi servants who accompany them, only half are named in the records: Swartboy, Titus alias Charmant, Keizer and his brother Arip, Yankee Kekelaar, Pokkebaas Klaas Kok. These the goods with which to barter: gunpowder, lead shot, iron, copper, beads, tobacco, knives, arak, and other suitably desirable items. Long the approach to home, hills speaking of time and season, of lost sheep scattered into bone, skulls staring their disappointment. He has failed them all. Kneeling here decades before, seeing a round plant, shriveled as the face of an old man. It isn't the reunion he had longed for. Close kin have all gone. Only the old and the very young remain. No one steps forward to greet them. Even the captain turns away once he learns the purpose of their visit. "The little Namakwa are not what we once were," Swartboy translates on the captain's behalf. The farmers know to expect hard bargaining and are ready with words of flattery for Swartboy to recite. They hold out gifts, point to the wagons that carry more, but the people have few livestock, mostly sick and thin. These they cling to, remembering a time when their herds filled the plains. Only a few can be persuaded, even by the Arak, to barter, and there is no welcome feast for the guests, who must sleep under their wagons and eat their dusty provisions with sullen faces, wondering at the folly of this venture. Swartboy moves around the kraal, trying to coax where he can. There are few who remember him, though, and he walks among them like a stranger, speaking their language, but unable to get them to respond. He finds the wife of a nephew, sees her standing in the opening of her reed hut, squinting out at him. She does not invite him inside, says only, "He's gone to find work. He wants to be like you, to speak Dutch and fire muskets. We haven't seen him in months." When he asks, she brings him a bowl of goat's milk, but will not look at him as she hands it over. "We have only 3 now," she says. Every sip holds her bitterness. Coming upon the great river, slapping the oxen into it, eyes wide as they struggle against the bottomless cold, holding onto the neck of the leader, feeling terror at its throat, kicked again and again by frantic hooves. Behind, his son coming loose, head under, hands hitting out, calling in wet mouthfuls. Then the stumble of ground, of oxen dragging them up the crumbling bank, Titus retching and sick, yet all of them alive, alive, desperately alive. But 9 more wagons to cross, half a day of churning in brown froth until they lie shivering asleep, smelling the river grow warm on one another's breath. Days gasp into drought, crunch of dust and stone of beaming heat, tongues swell into silence, harder than any rock. Cattle fall, are left, clawing for roots, chewing them to paste, feeding the boy with dusty fingertips. Horizon now empty, now full, images advance and retreat. Bright, bright thunder knocks back their ears. Rain breaks them open, lifts out their tongues. Help, they say, mouths burnt to black. And then what happens is that they get rescued by the Groot Namakwa or the Great Namakwa, and you'll have to buy the book or borrow it from someone when it comes out to see the rest of the story. um, and I'm not sure how long I'm meant to be reading for. Should I read a bit more? Should I shut up? What is the...
You have a captive audience here, I believe. Please
Oh,
continue.
okay.
We still have plenty of time.
Oh, okay. I don't want to be boring anyone. Um, okay, so the next thing I'm going to read is I I quite like the short story when it is a very short story. So flash fiction or you know very very super flash fiction where it becomes almost like I suppose I would think of it as prose poetry. Um, and I remember when I was a teenager and I saw what I understood for the first time was a prose poem by Margaret Atwood. And I thought, but this is cheating. This isn't a poem. Why is it in a poetry collection? And yet at the same time, I thought, oh, but this is such a wonderful opportunity where you can tell a story, but it can also be lyrical and beautiful and poetic. Um, and so that is something that I have been drawn to. And several years ago, I did buy a book called, I don't know if I have it here, called something like The Penguin Omnibus or whatever of prose poetry, but they definitely cheated because they just took bits from actual novels and other things and decided to call it prose poetry. Um, but anyway, that's just my opinion. All right, never mind. So one of the things that I was able to do through the research I was doing at Stellenbosch was find out things about our country that I never knew. So there were a lot of enslaved people from various parts of the East who came to the Cape via Batavia, and they were a whole group of Chinese um, sort of political prisoners who were sent to the Cape to be enslaved. That was their punishment. They had done something treasonous, but it wasn't explained what it was. And so I think there were about 15 that were sent to the Cape. This was during VOC rule, and only one of these was a woman. So she was the only Chinese woman in the whole of the Cape Colony at that time. And what I found out about her is that she eventually was able to buy her freedom, and she got into a relationship with one of the Chinese men who was already free, and they started a very successful business. They weren't allowed to marry because they weren't Christians, but they started a very successful business where they caught fish and fried it and had a little restaurant where people came and ate fried fish. They owned slaves who would do the fishing, and the woman had vast amounts of gold jewelry and diamonds that her husband had bought for her with the money that they made from um, their fish frying little restaurant. And um, she was utterly heartbroken when he died 6 years later. And she became an alcoholic. For 9 months, she just drank and drank and drank and eventually drank herself to death. Um, and so this is a story, a sort of a flash fiction short story thing that I was inspired to write, having read about her and done some research about her. First the drizzle, covering the houses and streets with a fresh damp smell, the night dark with coming storms, and she had to make her way from closed tavern down the street, her palm running along buildings and fences to guide her. She had still the bottle with her, 3/4 full, had shared another with others earlier, now drank from this one on her own. She felt the corner of the slave lodge where she had once lived for a decade, exiled from Batavia for crimes they considered treasonous. She saw the extent of the building stretching darkly out from her hand, thin moonlight coming, then going, coming, then gone. Putting her forehead against the dampening stones, her hands damp too, and the bottle, hair coming loose and sticking across her forehead, her cheeks, the strands soft on her lips, her tongue flicking at them, feeling swollen in her mouth, and her throat swelling too, full, suddenly too full, throwing up onto the wall, gasping a little, throwing up again. Wanting help, wanting someone to help her, but no way in, all the windows facing inwards to the courtyard where there were slave couples sleeping in hammocks, holding one another, keeping warm despite the drizzle, and she was sick at the thought of it, sick with the pain that jolted through her. She hunched over, pushed back the hair from her face, remembered how the other women had always wanted to touch it, feel the texture, wanting to see her naked too, to see if she was as they were. Show us, they'd say, show us down there, never having seen a Chinese woman before, the only one in the colony then, as she was now. Stumbling on through the filth of the streets, down towards the shore, drinking from the bottle every few steps, though it had long since lost its fierceness, tasted of nothing now. No part of her feeling anything, no taste, no smell, not the roughness of the buildings she passed, nothing but the hole still there inside her, the dreadful hole, walking around day after day with that open wound that would not heal. Reaching the shore, and knowing already that her men would be out fishing, having left them to get on with it themselves since their master's death, whom she had not been allowed to marry as they were not Christians, but who had left the bulk of his belongings to her as much as if she had been his wife by law, the slaves in her name now, and everything else, leaving them to catch the fish, to run the restaurant, to keep things going, while she lay in bed until late, sick with the wound of his absence, getting up at last, feeling through her jewelry, the things he had given her in the 6 years they had had together, and putting all the pieces on at the same time, the 9 rings, the earrings with their diamonds, all the necklaces and jeweled combs for her hair, searching for the smell of him, the fish and scales, the frying that clung to his hair, his clothes, and that she could not clasp now, the air thinner, everything thinner since his death, searching everywhere for him and finding him nowhere. Drizzle in her face, the slender moon, wild clouds, leaning back into the shore, her head pressing down into the scratch of sand. Damp, everything damp, and her wound open, always open, leaching into the mess around her. Trying to stop it, reaching for clumps of sand, packing them onto her chest, at her neck, covering her jewels, her silks, packing it tight around her sides. Trying to heal this love, this aching, dreadful love. Early morning, she woke with disappointment, found herself half buried, stumbled up, and made her way home, drinking the sand out of her mouth, wanting only to reach her bed, then fitting herself into the hollow his body had left in the mattress through their nights of sleeping curled into one another. She brought the bottle to her mouth again, spilling at that angle, but what did it matter? What did it matter? Damp with drizzle, with drink, with her suppurating wound, everything damp and leaking, and what did it matter? Wet still when they found her later. Drink, said the surgeon after his examination, having found no perforations, no sign of the wound she had carried through all the months of her grief. Okay, so that is my short story flash fiction thing. I've got two very short little things that I can read, which I happened upon this week because what happened is technology somehow decided to eject me from from itself and said that my storage was full and that I had to get rid of things. And I thought, well, let me have a look. What do I have in all these folders that I've been saving for a decade? And I came across a funny little I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Let's see what it is. It's about 250 words. Is it a poem? Is it prose? I don't know. And anyway, it was written, I can't remember exactly when, but my dad was still alive. I remember that. And he died in January 2012. So let's say it's from 2011. Um, and I'm half astonished that I still have it. And it's a strange thing. I remember it, but I don't remember it. Anyway, so let's have a little look at it and just we can decide later what it is. The woman was having trouble getting up, the weight of her large stomach pushing down on her thighs. Her arms could reach nothing for support. All around her, mourners wailed, eyes closed, faces and hands raised towards the sky. One after another, they had come towards her bulk, communicating their sorrow, but none thought to help her up and lead her to where the body lay on a sheet-covered table in the kitchen. Yeah, so that's my funny little thing that I found. Actually, I don't think that is 250 words at all. I wonder why that is what I had written next to it. Okay, and then the final thing I will read is also a very short piece. a little bit longer than this, that I have no recollection of writing. Um, and but apparently it was written while I was in Brazil. So that gives a vague kind of time of, I'm guessing, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And it is called Womanhood. They have found the girl. She is asleep in her bed, a soiled towel between her legs, though it was the baby that they found first, elsewhere, in the bowl of one of the further toilet stalls, one that still had a hinged door that could close against the shacks facing it. By the proof of past cases, the baby ought to have drowned. It ought not to have been found at all. But the municipality seldom remembers to send workers to empty the latrines, and so the baby did not sink. It stayed afloat amid the waste of these refugees and squatters, its cries loud enough to be heard, despite the proximity of the freeway and the sound of winter rain on zinc roofs. The girl wakes when they come in. She tries to hide the towel, stares back at the baby held in front of her, says, "It's not mine. I never asked for it." When pressed, she says again, "It's not mine." Later, she adds, "It was rape." Still, they do not pity her. There must be justice of a kind the police cannot provide. She must be punished, must learn from the crime of lust and blood. They strip her naked, walk her through the mud of the settlement, summon people to see her exposed, point at her child's body, her swollen breasts. Men call to her, imagining out loud what they might do to her if they catch her alone. Women hiss, spit into her path. The girl's mother follows. She does not wail as some might expect her to do. She does not beg for mercy. Instead, she speaks softly, telling her daughter, "You're a woman now. Accept the sin of what that means." Okay, so that's it.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was an astonishing reading. I'm very glad you persisted and shared those archival pieces, if one can call them this. Thank you. Fascinating reading. Could we all just stop a while and give Karen a round of applause for what we've just heard? Okay, so this is the Q&A part of the evening. So it's really an opportunity for everyone who's listened to any comments you might have, anything that struck you about the pieces that Karen read. Now is a good time to raise an actual or virtual hand, and we can take it from there. Okay, I don't see any brave first takers, so I will. Jacques, your hand. Okay, Jacques, floor is yours.
Oh, Karen, I loved your reading, and I'll be haunted by those situations in good ways. I I haven't. It'll take me time, I think, to ask the question that to formulate the question that I really want to ask. But I'm interested in the form of the writing and that it comes from this liminal space between prose and poetry. And obviously it's a distinction that matters to you. But the writing comes from this space in between, which really works for me in a way that I can't put my finger on quite yet. But did you want to experiment with form in that way? Did you know you were going to do that when you started, or was it the content of what you were writing that compelled you to choose that form?
Um, Thank you for the question. With Swart Boy and Titus, what happened was that I immediately, so I don't have I don't know how normal people think, but I don't have proper thoughts. I mean, I don't know what proper thoughts are, but they're not in my thoughts are never in words. They're in sort of colors or a sense. And so the sense I had as soon as I thought of the story was that it for me it needed to be told as I said, like sort of like an exhibition where we have these moments um in these lives, in these encounters that can stand alone, but together make up a whole narrative. Um and different parts of that narrative called for different forms. And I think if I were a more financially savvy kind of person, I would have realized that the more you move away from traditional doing things in a traditional way where people understand exactly what they're getting, the more difficult it is for publishers to publish it, the more difficult it is for publishers to sell it. But luckily or unluckily, I'm not sure which one. Luckily for me, I never think about who's going to buy it. It's always writing because the work, the story demands it, and so I'm a slave to what the story demands, and let the bank balance show the truth of that statement.
Yes, I I I believe that. Thank you. That makes sense to me, and y- one can feel the surprise on the page. They know that one came out surprised you, and
Yes.
so it surprises us, you know.
Yes. I think that we all have that moment, that delicious moment. I think my mom's watching, so I just have to make sure what I say. Is she watching? I don't know, maybe not. Oh, she is. Okay. I was going to talk about orgasms, but I won't now. But that delicious moment when you think, oh, I have the exact word or the exact sentence or phrase, and nothing beats that feeling, but it it's so rare in the writing. Most of the time, it's just agony and suffering and thinking, I'm a failure, this is a failure, I'm not doing justice to what I need to be doing. But when you do have that one bright little moment, it I suppose it's almost addictive, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jacques. Thank you, Karen. Sorry, I don't know if you wanted to say something more, Jacques.
No, no, that's it.
Okay. Um, I have comments and observations, Karen. My question was also going to be the form and how you arrived at the form. But I was struck by the seamlessness of it. It's not apparent to me as someone who's encountering this work for the first time. It all fits beautifully. It flows together. I'm not aware of the weaving other than being drawn into the writing, and that writing is striking because I love the way you use a very spare, very precise language. and focus on often small details. And it slows things down. It brings me closer to the scene or yeah. So the immediacy of the writing is there, and it's in all of them. And also you interrogate difficulty, for want of a better way of putting it, in all the pieces that you read. And maybe we are drawn to certain things, but I find that very compelling in everything that you read. So this is me going with Gaga. So I don't know what you'd like to say in response. Yeah.
Well, my mind's now gone completely blank. I always struggle with compliments. My instinct is to run away. And since I can't run away, I will just say thank you very much. And also a little anecdote. So last week I was reading, and I think it was for the first time. I don't remember having read it before, but Horace's Art of Poetry from, I think, around 19 BC, I think it is. And it's interesting how apt almost everything he says is to the present day. Because one of the things he says is, use the common word, but use it in such a way that it doesn't feel common, so that what it creates is something memorable. And don't try and impress people with words that are 6 syllables long, that because that is just pushing them away. You want to be able to appeal to everyone, that they read it, they don't have to go and try and figure out what you're saying. And that's always been very important to me, that what I write should be accessible. And you're not going to appeal to everyone. My own sister thinks I'm the most boring, horrific, awful writer ever. She read my first book and said, never again, thanks, but no thanks. And, that's that's very good for me. Very good for me to know that, yeah, that I can't appeal to everyone. And maybe I need to. She loves Harry Potter. Maybe I need to write a Harry Potter series, and then she'll buy my books.
How old is she, Karen?
She's
Oh, yeah.
45, I think.
Okay.
She's older
Right.
than me.
Okay. I also found it interesting in the Swartboy and Titus piece, the way it sort of throws a light on the present. I mean, the relationship between the boy and his father. It's there's something that just continues, that you recognize from in amongst the other details with the food, and that, yeah, it was also interesting for me to pick up on that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it is an interesting dynamic, because you can see with the father that a lot of what is leading this violence from him going to battle, as it were, with the white colonizers, is that he wants to leave his son a culture and a dignity and a life that he grew up with himself. And then, there were all kinds of things that happened, the colonizers coming in, the massive smallpox epidemic. There was also a huge drought. So a number of factors that led to the difficulties. And what does that mean then for the country going forward and into the the awful decades of the 20th century and still the healing that we're going through now. And can you ever blame a father for wanting to create the best life for his son?
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have anything else to add? Anything else they'd like to ask? Karen is here. She's all ears. Okay. It looks like we've come to the end then of. Okay, Hilda, hi. You're muted at the moment.
Hi. I'm calling in from Uganda, and I really thought I should say thank you to Karen for sharing her incredible poetry, her incredible voice. I love the way you draw from history to write poetry. It's not, I've not read many people who have done that, used history into poetry. So I just thought I should say thank you and credit you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilda, and thank you for tuning in all the way from Uganda. I feel quite touched. I feel a bit tearful now. It's been too long since I last saw you.
Yes, it's been a while. But I keep following you.
Thank you so much, Hilda.
You're welcome. All the best with your writing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hilda. I also remember you from one of the open book festivals in Cape Town. I can't remember which one, but I recognize your voice and your name. Yeah.
20, I think that was last year, maybe. Was it last or 2023? Imagine, maybe. I've also forgotten. Maybe 2023.
I think so.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, there were a lot of writers there.
And you attended all our sessions. And that's when we exchanged emails, and that's how I got onto this platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey. Okay, so I think that wraps it up for this part of the evening. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Just thanks again, Karen. That was wonderful and fascinating. Thank you. See you all in 5 minutes. So that'll be 20:37 or thereabouts on this clock anyway, which is probably not accurate, but hey, the open mic is a lot of fun. You can read your own stuff, someone else's work. Yeah, hope to see you then. I'm going to stop the recording now.